In our post-ACNH society, half-baked, cozy life sims hoping to catch a bit of Tom Nook's profit runoff have become an invasive species of sorts. Tell me, dear consumer, do you think you're prepared to venture into a truly unique game experience involving a vast open world? How about the chance of a lifetime to decorate an empty village at your own pace, perhaps with quirky neighbors? Listen, I know you're already shaking at the novelty of this, and I have a syringe of Versed on hand in case this is too much for you and you become violent, but what if there was also a crafting mechanic? Just breathe in and out. I understand that this level of innovation is a lot for you. The oversaturation of the market and my own unwillingness to make better decisions for myself both personally and financially has led me to a bit of disillusionment with games branded cozy. So as much as I knew I was gonna buy Pokopia, I was gearing up for a mildly pleasant Pokemon-themed New Horizons clone. After all, the trailer seemed to affirm that thought. It featured building, crafting, farming, playing with your animal-esque neighbors. A life sim, but with Pokemon, is a simple enough concept to market. What I was instead faced with is the experience of being a Ditto abandoned by both man and God. Pokopia is the life sim sandbox lab-grown baby of Minecraft, Animal Crossing, and probably the dying thought of the guy who created the TV show Lost if he passed away in a Pokemon-themed hospice. You play as a Ditto who awoke in a decimated version of the world you once knew, void of humans. Without any memory of what destroyed the Earth or where your beloved trainer is, your job is to rebuild and decorate 4 distinct regions and make them habitable for Pokemon and people once again. This game is not Animal Crossing. There are also times where it is quite literally Animal Crossing reskinned. It's my game of the year. Today, we're going to compare Pokemon Pokopia and Animal Crossing New Horizons, from their mechanics to their key differences. I will also be attempting to figure out what pharmaceutical cocktail the developers of this game were on during production. Without further ado, let's get this place humid. Let's start with the basics. Of course, the initial concepts of both games are similar in execution, otherwise I simply would not be making this video. Pokopia and Animal Crossing New Horizons are both labeled social sims in terms of genre. Although that's technically accurate, the real bulk of the gameplay time for these titles lies in decorating and gathering materials to decorate with. The social elements are certainly there and necessary, but it's more in the vein of calling Starbucks a bakery. We both know that lemon pound cake was made in a beaker at USC. I would actually argue that Pokopia has a bit more of a socialization requirement than New Horizons, but we'll get into that further later. Crafting, farming, and daily quests are also a through line for both, as they are with pretty much any given cozy game, and your neighbors are non-human, round little creatures. I'm using the term creatures incredibly loosely. I mean, this is just a human man who walks into the vape shop and asks if they take Klarna. They also share a similar progress rating system, with Animal Crossing's being a 5-star scale and Pokopia's being area comfort levels. The latter is much more involved, but the core concept is more or less the same. Your main quest on both sides is to raise your progress level, complete quests, and mold the world to your liking. On a more background level, you're also collecting objects, raising friendships, and ritualistically torturing any townsfolk that piss you off. I'm kidding mostly, I would never do that to any Pokemon. Except for Drillbur. I fucking hate Drillbur, holy shit. Although there is a solid shared foundation between the two games, they start to branch off wildly in 2 different directions when it comes to the details of how these mechanics are used. Like I said earlier, in Pokopia, you have to attract Pokemon back into each of the 4 main areas. You do this by restoring individual habitats one by one. Each Pokemon in the dex requires a specific habitat with certain items to have a chance to appear, which you learn about through hints found around the world or given to you by other Pokemon. Matching a Pokemon's habitat needs shown in the hint is only the start though, since it's just the prerequisite for their arrival. Once your new neighbor actually settles in, the real work begins, and you have suddenly been transported into HGTV's original series Fixer Upper, but this is not Texas, and you feel personally responsible for Charmander's dissatisfaction. Your Pokemon's comfort level needs to be raised by adding to or changing changing their habitat's features and fulfilling their requests as best you can. They can ask for a type of item, or an increase in humidity, or perhaps a light snack. There are a million different things they can ask for, and if I listed them all here, that would not only be boring, but stupid, so I won't. But any given Pokemon's Dex entry will have a list of their habitat preferences. If an item type or condition is preferred, adding it will help them get comfier faster. The scale of comfort levels ranges from no home at the very bottom, with awesome being the cap. As you raise these levels, your overall environment level for each area will also increase, stopping at level 10. The higher your environment level is, the more items will be available for purchase at the PC, which sits outside of a pulverized Pokemon Center. Shit's bad. Shit's really bad. You can find items to decorate in a variety of ways around the map, such as going diving or digging up artifact spots. Crafting recipes for furniture can also be acquired from random spots around the world or from Pokemon. Animal Crossing's 5-star island rating system is the Cocomelon version of this. I do not necessarily mean that as a negative, but it is incredibly simple and less rigorous in comparison. To get to 5-star status in ACNH, you do have to fulfill certain environmental criteria as well, but it's a lot more generalized. Isabelle will ask you for things like more flowers, more trees, less trees, more placed items, but nothing truly specific. This also encompasses the whole island rather than one tiny piece of land. The reward system isn't staggered either. Honestly, you're given one big landmark, which is terraforming and KK Slider, and that's given it 3 stars. You can go for 5 stars if you want the Lily of the Valley, but you don't have to. You don't unlock all that much in the process of building up your island, which is untrue in Pokopia. In ACNH, obtaining items and DIYs isn't so much a matter of progress, but a matter of time and luck. You check into Nook's Cranny each day, you look for your recipe bottles, and you pray to God the couch you want rears its leather head. That, or you head to a treasure island and control fate yourself. If we zoom back out though, both games have you placing items, that is for damn sure. Pokopia is, without a doubt, build-focused. By that I mean you're putting things together with your own creepy, gooey ditto hands, piece by piece, in the style of making a Minecraft house. There are a wide variety of blocks available to turn into structures, or paths, or even sculptures if you wanted. This gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of filling space, where you can make actual contained buildings in custom shapes. As you saw on the screen earlier, most Pokemon habitats are initially outdoors, but you can also build them houses to raise their comfort level faster. House is an umbrella term here, since it can be anything from a few connected blocks and a door to a prefabricated, non-blocky house that you can get at the Pokemon Center. These take-and-bake houses are the most similar to Animal Crossing's villager houses. You can decorate the inside, you can paint the outside, but the structure itself is just there. You can also make as many or as few of these houses as you'd like, unlike Animal Crossing's standard 10. You can break and place blocks in the same style as, again, Minecraft, including natural blocks, which allows you to terraform. Blocks can be broken at any time using the move Rock Smash, which can be accessed with one single button. Being able to terraform without going through multiple menus like in Animal Crossing is maybe one of the most important details this game has in my eyes. All of the tools you need when building, including some other moves like Water Gun and Cut, are so easily accessible. The streamlining of this mechanic in comparison to ACNH is a marked improvement, even with the simple ability to see where your character is going to hit or place a block. Still having designated moves for each action also makes it so you're less likely to fuck up a build by hitting the wrong button, and it doesn't make you go through a million phases to get your desired outcome. If Pokopia is a building game, ACNH is a decorating game that encourages you to figure out how to make it a building game. Most builds in New Horizons either use items to mimic a structural component or just have them out in the open air. This is fine, but it can be frustrating to get the effect right, and it sometimes ends up looking a little odd. I'm also bad at this game, so... Pokopia's block system gives you a lot more control over the final look of your builds rather than forcing you to work with what you have. Anyway, if you don't like the idea of spending all that time hand placing blocks, but you still like the distinctly square look, you can also purchase building kits where the blocks will be placed for you. Different from the house kits because these are indeed blocks that you can manipulate if you want, but the work is done by your Pokemon. That's right, you ever told Mr. Mime to get a job? Now he can. All you have to do is gather materials, bring a few Pokemon over, and chop chop. This takes some real-life time to complete, but one can assume if you're an Animal Crossing time traveler, you're also a Pokopia time traveler. I really like that you're able to dictate what level of involvement you have in restoring the town. If you want to build, you can, or you can simply rely on the kits and still get an aesthetically pleasing village going. With Animal Crossing, either you decorate or you don't. The fact that most of Pokopia's items are crafted rather than purchased at shops also helps solve ACNH's limited catalog order issue, which has been the subject of most of my nightmares for half a decade now. I'm not saying ACNH's building system is dog shit though, because it's not, and it has some advantages. Of course, it inspires a lot of creativity, especially with custom designs, which Pokopia doesn't have. The simplicity of New Horizons can also be a benefit. You don't have to worry so much about framework components, just items and designs. Depending on the person, that might provide a way chiller, less stressful experience. Designing interiors is also much easier with the drag and drop option. For someone who gets stressed out making a lot of choices and coming up with ways to fill out the map, this is a lot chiller. Pokopia, on the other hand, gives you the option to be very hands-on if you so choose. With that being said, I have never ever been more intimidated by the size of a game's map in my fucking life. Not only is the initial area, Withered Wasteland, huge, but there are 3 more of them. 4 if you count Pallet Town. Each region has sections that are entirely hidden at first glance too, and finding them in the beginning kinda actually made me nauseous. You can, oh my fucking god, you people can't do anything me all you fucking want, but I had multiple Pokemon to take care of, 10 acres of dry grass to water, a Pokemon Center to fix, the single most busted outfit on this earth, my trainer was gone, my air conditioner was making a weird noise, I'm going gray early. With each Pokemon basically having a quest of its own alongside the main quest, the thought of going through the comfort level raising process again and again was a bit overwhelming, and they kind of fail at easing you into things. You are just immediately asked to run this town like the fucking Navy. Once you reach an environment level of 10 though, you don't really have to keep raising your Pokemon's comfort levels. You can choose to be done when you want to be done. The thought of any Pokemon being even remotely uncomfortable does give me crippling guilt though, so I don't know. Having the areas sectioned off helped, but the gates were looming nefariously at all times, so the idea that there was more was omnipresent and scary. I think Animal Crossing's map being a decently sized but very contained mass of land rather than multiple large sections that almost compound on one another takes away some of that pressure. Even though it is a sizable task, a completed ACNH island feels far more within reach than a completed Pokopia save. I'm not sure if I'm in the minority with this, but I also wasn't huge on the Pokemon material processing mechanic. I like the idea of it in theory, but in practice, it truly acts as an entirely new additional step without much intrigue. You still have to gather the initial resources yourself, like logs for lumber, and then wait real-life time for those items to be converted into other items. The back and forth between your Pokemon's houses and the build sites can be tedious too, especially with the limit of how many of a resource can be made per batch. I think it's cute, but Animal Crossing's method of chopping and hitting and being done with it wins out for me. Going back to similarities, the dialogue of both games can lean on the iffier side in terms of quantity. The cadence and quirks of Pokopia's writing are much more fun and distinct, and the writers make some sillier, more engaging choices with their tone. There is a lot of personality and uniqueness with all of the different Pokemon, and I really like that. However, it almost has even more of a repetition problem than New Horizons, which already struggles with variety. I am a bit more forgiving of this on Pokopia's side because of one main factor, and that is that Pokopia seems to know it's a building game. A lot of resources seem to have gone into refining the landscaping and decorating mechanics, which made for a noticeably smooth experience, but likely allowed for less focus on regular dialogue. New Horizons attempts to juggle both decorating and life sim elements at the same intensity, which means neither reach their full potential. The final major factor I'd like to touch on here is that Pokopia does have an overarching narrative in the background that ACNH does not have in any capacity, really. I don't think it's fair to compare the two in that regard, since the Animal Crossing series has never featured much of a plot, and shoving one in would change the atmosphere of the games quite a bit. Pokopia's storytelling is subtle enough that I personally don't find it messes with the life sim feel, but it is also present enough to almost taunt you at times. Being fed scraps of information about why this world, your home, has become desolate and quiet helps the game to avoid the sort of sterility a lot of cozy games can have. Like I said, don't want to harp on this part much, but I do think that very slight somber feeling helps to set Pokopia apart. Now, Pokopia is a game that came out this year, and ACNH is a game that came out 6 years ago, which is really scary and I don't like that. Over those 6 years, I have logged over 1,500 hours into New Horizons. My opinion of it has changed and grown since 2020, and I suspect the same will happen with Pokopia, especially because it is a large game. However, comparison doesn't always suggest that one option is better than another, simply different, and a lot of how these features are executed is a matter of personal preference. I do think it's interesting to see how Nintendo's choices have evolved over time, and if they took player feedback into account. Pokopia, to me, is a uniquely involved game that this genre was really begging on its hands and knees for. It is not Animal Crossing, and it isn't improved Animal Crossing either, and that's a good thing. I'd prefer if the next Animal Crossing game was improved Animal Crossing, personally. So, did we compare apples and oranges? Maybe. Did we compare oranges to grapefruits? Definitely. Anyway, Pokopia is a great game, and I've ditto transformed into the lamp by your bed, and I live in your house now. Thank you so much for watching this video, I really appreciate it, and thank you to all of my members. You guys are the best, and I appreciate you so much. I know my Pokopia talents look chopped, you don't have to tell me, okay? Thank you. Stay safe, stay wonderful, my friends, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.